ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Media Watch. My name is Bob Loverin, and with my host, or my co-host, basically Rob Raffelli. If we talk here about the media, basically, and that's we're gonna, what you'll read in the papers and see on TV and TikTok and so on and so forth, and what's the other one? Instagram or Twitter. Twitter.
We run tweets on Twitter.
And pretty much any of the network shows, even the cable and the regular CBS, NBC, and ABC. Try to focus in on stuff that they talk about that we don't particularly think are the facts aren't there. I always like to say it's the truth, but the truth is made up of facts. But what the truth that they have is they take a certain group of facts and they make that the truth. Well, what you've done is you've cut off, they've left out a few things. I got a couple stories about that at some point in time, I'll tell you that. Anyway, that's what we talk here about and go through it. And I want to start off with, Rob, I want to start off with Ukraine again. It's in the news and it's a constant. And again, as I've said before on this show, and as we talk, quite often, it has to do with, it's really kind of, for me, it kind of has the perspective of the World War II. All of the players, thank you, the players there are the same. You have Russia, and you have the Germans. They have a certain part in it, not the Nazi part of it. It's a different part, really. But then, of course, Ukraine. That was also certainly a part of the World War II when the Nazis invaded at that time the Soviet Union. And it was one of those republics. What does it call? Stands for
the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics.
Republics, right?
There were about 15 of them.
Yeah, one of which was Ukraine, which is supposed to be sort of independent. Well, of course, it wasn't.
But they were sort of independent in that they all had a seat in the General Assembly of the UN.
Yeah, right.
But that was just to make.
Is that right? I didn't know that. Really?
That was why Russia wanted them to have separate identities instead of being submerged.
I didn't know that was that.
But believe me, Russia ran it all.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, yeah, Uncle Joe.
Of course, Uncle Joe was Georgian.
Yeah, that's right. Which is one of the republics, basically, I believe, in that time. That's right, right below, off to the. If you look at a map, it's off to the left down toward the bottom. One of those countries, Armenia also was, but that did go independent, basically, and now it really is independent.
Right, and borders Turkey.
Well, let's just talk a little history about that. Putin, what's his first name again?
Vladimir.
I can never get that straight.
Call him Vlad.
Senor Putin. As he said, it's not really a country. Well, it really wasn't a country up until the end of World War I. And with that big taboo that they had in the Versailles Palace, what do they call it? Treaty of Versailles?
Treaty of Versailles.
Well, they divided up countries. They made up countries all over the place. And one of those was the Ukraine. They made it into an independent country because at that time there was no more czar, and the communists had just taken over in 1917. Keep in mind the revolution that was 1917. The communists, the Bolsheviks, didn't take over the whole country. They really only took care of St. Petersburg at that point. That's where the Tsar was.
And there was a more democratic revolution, and then the Bolsheviks knocked that off because before that there was the Kerensky regime, which lasted about a few years.
Right, and in that process, but the Treaty of Versailles was like 1919 or something like that, or so on, and they actually established Ukraine as a separate country. Well, that didn't last long. I mean, at some point, the Bolsheviks took over, and so it was not independent anymore. It said it like it was, but it didn't cross old Joe, Uncle Joe, as they called him, as I call him anyway. At any rate, so that didn't last, and in fact, in the 1930s, when Joe decided that there was going to be no more independent from the kulaks, right?
Kulaks were the successful farmers of Ukraine.
Yeah, right. They were
feeding the country.
Farmers. And so Uncle Joe decided to make them all collective farms. So all of the kulaks, actually they just killed the kulaks off, and or sent them off to Siberia, which of course was a death sentence too, of course. and
sent in the winter and unable to grow and without food.
Yeah, without food.
What happens to them? He executed them the slow way, but there was millions of people whose basic crime, they were class enemies.
Yeah.
Meaning that they were farmers who were successful and had made some money and got comfortable.
Right.
So other people who were not as successful said, "Oh,
took over.
I don't like them. Oh yeah, go get them. Go get them, Joe."
There was a famine, especially in the Ukraine, probably in the rest of Russia too. Probably, but in the Ukraine especially, there was like millions of Ukrainians died. They just starved to death, basically, in the country. Well, obviously they didn't like Joe very much. I wouldn't say obviously, but Joe. So that when the Nazis came in 1941, September 1st of 1941, when they invaded the USSR, the Ukrainians welcomed them as liberators. They soon found out that wasn't maybe just as bad or worse than it was.
They hated Stalin. This guy opposed Stalin. So come on. Yeah, like you say, it was. There were no heroes in that story.
That's right, exactly. In fact, like I've said before, at least Hitler had a plan to kill all the Jews, and he did. But Joe, he was a matter of but Putin in this situation, he just kills everybody. He doesn't care. And of course, obviously the biggest single day of killing Jews was in the Ukraine at Baba Yar, which was a big, outside of the Kiev, the capital of the country. They dug a huge pit and killed 33,000 people in one day. Shot them. They did not gas them. They just shot them. They all got dumped into a big pit, which they ended up, actually the people that got shot ended up digging the hole to begin with. That was just the beginning. Well, of course, they soon found out, the Ukrainians soon found out that the Nazis were worse, basically, than Joe, in fact. But a lot of them turned around and did it. Just a little bit of history here. A lot of them were really receptive to it, because the Nazis were certainly anti-communist. And of course, the Ukrainians were anti-communist too, if Joe was representative of what that was all about, of that philosophy. And that Ukrainian guards, the guards at the concentration camps all over Germany and Poland, mostly Poland, were Ukrainians. They're on the trains, the guards on the trains. They were complicit in this whole process of the Holocaust, in fact. So there was something there as part of it and so on. However, currently, of course, the Russia has invaded the country and killed a bunch of people and so on and so forth. But what Putin has done is he's made it a country. Now, as I've said to you before, Rob, what happened was all of a sudden they were united against this Russia that had invaded their country, and if they're victorious, it'll be all the worse. They'll always be independent. They have a little taste of freedom in 2014. That's when they started to become a legislative. A democracy, when they voted presidents in and so on. The current guy, he got voted in, surprisingly enough, and it turned out to be the current president. You see him, they call him Churchill in a T-shirt, and you see him on TV almost every day and so on. But he's turned out to be a real big hero there.
And of course, media and movements like this need heroes. Sometimes they just make one. Mm-hmm. By the way, I don't have any dirt on the guy. I just figure.
Yeah, well, of course.
Some guy.
Well,
he's probably less corrupt than the previous one.
Yeah, remember the Russians had taken over the country, really, but they had the Orange Revolution or something like that. They had all wore orange colors and stuff like that. Anyway, they took over, and the guy that had been elected, who really became a dictator and subservient to the Soviet Union, to Russia, they kicked him out, and he's still out. He's still out there someplace.
Maybe that's why Putin wanted to invade. Maybe it was because he didn't have a puppet in place. I keep wondering what
Well,
it is that he thinks
that's
he's
what he would. If he
accomplishing.
had taken over the capital, Kiev, he would automatically, Putin would automatically have assigned a puppet dictator for the country. Now, all of a sudden, but of course he hasn't. They have not been able to take the capital. In fact, they've given up on that. They're not going to be at least. And that's the other side of the coin too. Well, I'll let you hear about this. Now, what's that city that on the Sea of Azov that they're
Mariupol.
Mariupol? Okay, I never can pronounce this stuff. And anyway, thank you for being here for straighten me out. Mariupol. They're at the point of which they're going to take over this city. There's a certain enclave, and it's called a huge steel complex when they make steel and so on. And these people, like 2,000 people, are in there. About 1,000 soldiers, in fact, are in there, and they looks like they're not able to ammunition. And my thought there is, go and get them. This is where it comes into the World War II, when the Poles revolted in, I think it was July, August of 1944, and they had an uprising, and it lasted for 2 months actually. Before the Nazis were able to put it down, and they were fighting with nothing, basically some guns and so on. Whereas of course the Nazis had tanks and artillery and weaponry and that, and they were able to overcome them. But it took 2 months. Just think if the as the Ukrainians are now getting, I think, weapons that really are going to be very effective. And they already have
They got Stingers.
Stingers and javelins.
And the javelin
and
missiles.
the javelins and so on. And that shot down a lot of helicopters, blowing them up. Everybody on board was dead when it hit the ground. Shouldn't be laughing at it, but the bottom line is that they have not, they didn't expect this to be such a long thing. This could be a very long war, as a matter of fact. Especially for the Soviet. What is really proven is that the Russian armies are sort of incompetent. That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, I don't think, well, first of all, the Russian army probably didn't expect to have to fight anyone. Mm-hmm. After all, as near as I could tell, no one was likely to attack Russia. And all you had to do was not attack anyone else. And it could be a pretty cushy place. You know, 3 square meals, get out and get a little exercise, shoot some guns.
Yeah.
So I don't think any of these guys really were hoping to be sent to some front lines and
right.
Hey, that place where they're shooting at us, go charge that.
Yeah, well, as I've heard that a third of the force that were originally going in, 2/3 were professional soldiers, but 1/3 were conscripts. That they drafted them and so on. You got to think what those guys are. What are we doing here? I don't want to get shot.
I never wanted to visit Ukraine.
Yeah, right. This way. Anyway, you might just see something like to relieve these guys that they're in Mariupol, which is on the sea. If they could get ashore, take 1,000 Ukrainians, arm them like they're just everything that possible they can carry into a war zone and so on, and let's see and try to get to them to supply them and to relieve this siege essentially against the steel plant. I wouldn't be not American soldiers now, but the weapons that American soldiers do use, as a matter of fact.
Well, you know, there's a lot of different countries that border the Black Sea.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that I'm not hearing more of. Maybe they shouldn't tell me. More of, private and other ships being loaded up with equipment and
Turkey
run on
is right across, right. And they're members of NATO. Although the guy Erdogan is the president there and so on. He's about cushy with Putin supposedly, but not now, not anymore. He's supplying them. Turkey is supplying the Ukrainians with the drones of some kind that are really, these are attack drones, and he's shipping thousands of those things for the Ukrainians to use. This thing is a long ways from being over.
Yeah, you could certainly do some transshipping through places like Bulgaria and Romania.
Yeah, that too. But I mean, there's a lot of ways. They say they're hitting the supply lines with these missiles and so on, but. There's ways of getting around stuff like that, and so I suppose, especially when it's coming by ocean. And then, of course, the Ukrainians sunk the cruiser, brand new, by the way, the Russian cruiser was the flagship of all the ships that they had
in the Black Sea.
In the Black Sea and that. And it was sunk. Two missiles from the Ukrainians hit that missile and sunk it. I was thinking about this. The Russians say there was a fire there in the ship, and that's why it sank, basically. And maybe what's worse, that they got hit by missiles, or that they couldn't control a fire in their brand new cruiser that's got all these fancy deals and so on, and a fire actually sunk the ship?
Yeah, it was.
That's worse than the missiles.
It was hit
Talk
by
about incompetence.
A couple of homegrown cruise missiles. I don't know where they got their parts, but the Ukrainians actually put together at least a couple of cruise missiles to fire at it.
Well, that's what I think. I heard about a few days before that they were given a ship missile by, I think, I can't remember. No, it was like Norway, I think, or something like that. So on. That's the other side of the coin. It isn't just the United States supplying weapons to the Ukrainians. It's all of the NATO countries supplying weapons. Even the Germans. They weren't supplying for a while. They were giving them helmets. Remember?
Yeah, there was nothing deadly.
Nothing deadly. Well, that's changed now. The Germans now are giving the Ukrainians some weaponry and so on, and you know, Sweden. That's the other side, and that's another thing that happened. Sweden and Norway.
Sweden and Finland.
And that's right. Norway is already a member of NATO. Yeah, Sweden and Finland. Finland, of course, borders right on the Soviet Union. They are pretty much, they have not taken over NATO. Sweden has been neutral for a long time, since 100 years or more. But now they're feeling it's a little more threatening and so on. So now you very well will likely see both Sweden and Finland become members of NATO.
Well, they're looking at Putin and saying, he doesn't seem to mind attacking neighbors. And
exactly.
I'm a neighbor.
Yeah, exactly.
Who doesn't
Especially Finland.
Yeah.
And Finland's had trouble with Russia before.
Many times. And you know, people have often criticized Finland for going along with some things of
the Nazis.
And for
because Russia had invaded Finland.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was going to say the Finns knew perfectly well that they were much smaller and weaker than the huge nation that shared their border, and they had to tread lightly. They say, well, I'd sort of like this place to be run by Finns rather than Russians, so maybe if we don't make them too angry, we can keep ruling Finland. Yeah,
so I mean, he's surrounded. You know, I won't say give him credit, but Putin is right that the NATO nations and his eastern border, western border, is pretty much surrounded by the NATO countries.
Well, if he'd wanted to play nice, you know, become a normal nation instead of a primary adversary,
right?
We probably could have been European Union. It's a little like not as isolated as Kim Jong-un in North Korea.
Yeah.
But you say, play nice, and all this belligerent crap goes away.
Right.
You know, we can have hotels and industry and all kinds of nice stuff here.
Yeah.
But some people, I don't know if it would work out for them well or not. They have a dim view of Western civilization, or should say, you know, let's say, European bankers.
Yeah.
And guess what? They're not entirely wrong.
That's true.
I don't recommend invading your neighbors, and
But
it's hard to warm up to Russia in this one.
But there they have a choice, you know. They can do something about it. Plus the fact that they almost all of these countries, not all of them, well, actually, most of them are now representative governments. They do have elections every year, or not every year, but you know, like we do
regularly.
Regular elections. You know, they change power every few years and so on, and that's what happened in Ukraine, as a matter of fact. Anyway, you could go on and on about Ukraine and so on. It's an ongoing story, however. I'm kind of following it along, but I think the Ukrainians are going to they're going to attack Russia. Like, you declared war on Ukraine. Well, Ukraine has a right to go into Russia and bomb a few cities and so on. And the other thing I can bring up, however, is the missiles that come in. You know, the bombs that come there, the shells. That's really what's devastated the Ukraine and so on. Get some stuff in there that'll shoot down those missiles. Talk to the Israelis. They have that down to a They have a lot of stuff going on. Although Israeli is one of the countries that has not come out against this thing against Putin going into the Ukraine. India is another one, and what was the other one? And China, of course, in that. But Israel has been low key, basically. They're not picking a fight with these guys, but they're the ones that you could call on. And of course, the United States and other countries too have weapon systems that will shoot down missiles.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if the Israelis are doing a little bit of it on the quiet.
Who?
The Israelis.
Yeah.
They might help.
Well, that's true too. Yeah.
But the United States has burned so many people who've wanted to do something nice for us on the quiet. And then somebody comes along and blabs it all over the place and makes it hard on the leaders who've been helping you.
Yeah.
And I look at that and think, did you not like people wanting to help you?
Yeah.
'Cause I would have, gone along with their sensitivities.
Now, who are you talking about? Israel or Ukraine?
Yeah, well,
There's
I'm talking about past situations where
the Israelis. No.
it's really a little more nebulous. But I've noticed that American politicians will blab out things that were secret, and it's because of some political gain for themselves, or they don't agree with something, and it seems really small and petty to burn an ally who's helping you because you thought, oh, this will get me some more votes, or my constituents don't like those people anyway.
Yeah, but you got to point out that in this case, the popular support for Ukraine has been very good. I see on the freeway there on Patterson Avenue, there's a Ukrainian flag on either side of the bridge. It's sitting there now for a couple of weeks or so, and so on and so forth. And you see this, that the Pope comes out against them, and they had a meeting of the G20 or something, 21 or something like that recently, and they walked out when the Russian representative, who was part of the G20, got up and spoke. Several of the countries walked out. It was yesterday or something like that. It's just, and of course they closed all the Starbucks.
Alshom.
Yeah, in the Soviet, and all over in the Soviet Union, and McDonald's closed them all up and all that. There are a lot of hundreds of companies have just said that no more business with.
Now, how about in the foreign exchange? I understand that the ruble has
it's recovering
quite a bit.
Yeah,
might have been a good buying opportunity.
Well, somebody made money at it, you know that.
Somebody
they bought
did.
it cheap and sold, and now they can get out of it, making some money on it and so on. But this whole sanction thing is amazing. These sanctions and so on. Putin's two daughters now have been sanctioned. You can imagine Ivan, whatever his name is exactly. You can imagine what his home life was like now when his daughters, who go to Miami Beach and can go to Switzerland and so on. Now they can't even get on a plane and get out of the country, get out of Russia and so on. And that's one of the sanctions. And they have to work, especially oligarchs. I guess I'll say one more thing. This Putin guy has the finger on the bomb, nuclear bomb and so on. He's got his thing. And this the senator from South Carolina, Simpson.
No, you're thinking about.
I know the guy that. Anyway, he's here. He's quoted all the time.
I'm stunned that it's not coming right to my lips.
I thought it was Simpson. Anyway, bottom line is he said that you got to get rid of this guy or something like that. Do him in. It didn't say kill him.
He said
outright.
take him out.
Take him out. Take him out.
This is the guy who's what used to be pals with John McCain. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Can't think of his.
Anyway, he's a senator from South Carolina. I thought it was something symptom. Look it up.
No, it's not.
But at any rate, well, let's face it. There's a lot of people out there. I'm sure that he doesn't have any close. People don't get too close to Putin. Basically, he has a real person that he sees. He doesn't go out and have a burger without a huge bodyguard. It doesn't go out basically. At any rate, this could easily happen too. There's some kind of coup, or she get rid of him, and so on. I always like to say about democracy and government. Our government is elections. In other countries, it's assassinations. You get rid of the guy by shooting them, and that's part of the political process. I would like to say that Adolf Hitler had 21 or something like that, 22 attempts on his life. all of which failed. Even starting in the way back before he was even chancellor, as a matter of fact, and all of them failed. He had to end up, of course, killing himself. There was even Germans that wanted a little different government. They wanted an election too, except their election was a bullet. Yeah. Anyway, I'll let you talk. We get on and on about this.
Well, maybe
let's go on to Elon Musk.
Yeah, I mean, after all, he's the richest man in the world.
Yeah. And by the way, he gained $38 billion yesterday because the stock was up, and he was already the richest man in the world. He probably is close to having $300 billion. That's what his net worth is.
Before you know it, you're talking about real money.
Now you're talking about real money. Buying up Twitter, that's peanuts.
That's right. He offered $43 billion for Twitter, which at the time was something like 30% above its share price, right. And by the way, it's fallen again since. One thing when they say we don't like your offer, you think, well, what income stream are you imagining that justifies a higher offer?
Yeah.
I mean, basically, what Musk is looking at, he says, I can make money on this because if I reorganize it some, it'll make more money because, and first of all, he's a free speech absolutist, or says he is.
Right.
Some people say that he's engaged in silencing others, but anyway, he says he's a free speech absolutist, and he's looking at it and saying, look, you've thrown off enough people off these platforms, and there's enough people who wanted to follow those folks. Well,
like Donald Trump.
Like, how many tens of millions of people followed @real Donald Trump on Twitter? I mean, it was
into the millions.
It was into the tens of millions.
Tens of millions.
Like more than 40 million, probably closer to 80 million. And you said, oh, here's the back of my hand to everybody who felt like following that.
Yeah.
So it's become very, very much liberal and left slanted, and they always couch it as they interpret their own actions as saying, well, we're preventing irresponsible speech, we're keeping you safe, we want to.
But it's very biased.
We want to prevent misinformation, but frankly, from the outside, that's not how it looks. And of course, there's a lot of things where. There was a bunch of things people got kicked off Twitter because of things that they said about COVID-19.
Yeah.
Okay, so
and the anti-vaxxers.
But a year later, those things that they said were true.
Yeah.
So excuse me, whose misinformation was that? It's.
And let's face it, they're losing advertising. My God.
I would expect them, at least you should come back to them and say, hey, I'm really sorry about that. You were right. It wasn't misinformation. Come on back. No apologies. And that tells me that it was never about accuracy. It was never about misinformation. That was the current excuse that day. And when you get something that says, we're closing your account because of breaches of terms of service, you say, what, is there anything I can fix? What did I say? And you don't get anything. And again, that tells me that it's arbitrary. Somewhere in there, somebody with power has, maybe like one of these.
Yeah,
someone with power has said, I never liked that guy.
Yeah.
Kick him off.
And of course, we're talking about the laptop, right? Hunter Biden.
Well, that was one of the New York Post, one of the bigger papers in New York City, reported on the Hunter Biden laptop, which was a laptop that he basically abandoned at a place that repairs them. How could that happen? Have you any idea how much drugs Hunter Biden was probably admitted to taking? Anyway,
that's why he got kicked out of the Navy. He was in the Navy, but he was doing drugs, and they threw him out.
Yeah.
Now, another part of the story.
I'm not even here to beat up on the guy's character. I don't like his character, but so what? People are not here in this world to please me. They've proven that to me many times. So, thing is, New York Post brought this story out, and they had solid reporting, and they had a provenance for where it came from. They had very real quotes from the things that came off the laptop, and some of it was pretty impressively damning. So Twitter throws them off. They say, no, New York Post, you can't be on Twitter anymore.
That's right. Yeah.
And I,
Well,
you
that-
mean for supplying very important, true information? That's why I can't be on Twitter.
And now, of course, the Washington Post,
And-
there
and
was
even-
a New York Times, because the New York Times found
Yeah.
out,
They
in
said-
fact, it was all true.
Yeah, here you are. It's a year and a half later, and they say, yeah, in fact, this was breaking in the weeks before the 2020 election.
Yeah.
And in fact, something like 16% of Democrats have said, well, if I'd known that about the Hunter Biden laptop, no, I'm not at all sure I would have voted for Biden.
Yeah.
So that,
Joe.
yes, so that in one item would have prevented Joe Biden from being elected.
Yeah.
So Twitter suppressed it. The New York Times suppressed it. The Washington Post suppressed it. So that's when you suppress true information, and that's relevant.
But then this recently now they've apologized for it or something like that. I can't remember exactly. I know it's maybe other
Yeah,
newspapers have done it and so on. But
I-
and in fact, that story's not over, especially if the Republicans take over the House, especially the House, and which they probably will. Reading the story today about that, the average is 30 seats in the midterm elections for almost all presidents. Only it was like Roosevelt, I guess. He's the only one that really gained seats, even in the first part in the 30s when he was president. This is FDR.
Okay, so he was elected in 32, so you're saying he gained seats in 34.
In that, yeah, he gained seats in 34. I think he even did in 1936 when he was reelected president.
He kept on gaining for quite a while.
Oh God! I mean, he had well over 300. He had more than 2/3 of the House, and even in the Senate. That was FDR. This is getting off on the other subjects and so on. But getting back to Elon Musk now.
And Twitter.
I don't know if Twitter, and to see if he comes desperately, if, the money talks, and the board of directors have an obligation, a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders and so on, who, this guy's made a bid for the company that's going to make a lot of money.
Make the shareholders
before he got started here, it came out that he owned 11% of the stock, blah blah blah. They knew that they have an obligation to really, but you said they had a poison pill. Talk about that.
Right. This is a term that's used in the financial world when boards of directors of publicly traded companies change rules, and they change the rules to disadvantage either anybody who wants to take them over or a particular suitor, a particular buyer who wants to take them over. In the case of Twitter, the new rule is something like if anybody buys more than 15% of the outstanding shares, that they will offer to existing shareholders, except that person, additional shares at.
Can they even do that? Oh man!
Apparently they can.
I guess.
It sounds like a dilution, but anyway, they're saying that they will offer the others additional shares at a reduced cost. So basically, it's supposed to reduce the value of the stuff that he's laid out the money for, and also make it harder for him to come up with a controlling interest. So anyway, that's the poison pill. It's a rule that's effective for 2 years. At least that's what's in the language of it that the board of directors passed. So anyway, it's not necessarily a good idea, and as you were saying, they have a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders.
Right.
And at some point, shareholders may be looking at them and saying, that was a quick 35% for me.
Yeah.
How dare you slap away 35% that would have gone into my pocket, it would have paid for my kids' college education.
Right, exactly. In fact, that's the idea. That's a democracy in it, because if the shareholders decide that this board of directors is not doing the job they're supposed to do, they get to vote them out.
Right.
That's what happens.
The expression is shareholder democracy.
Yeah, and that could easily happen, and especially if you're taking money away from a guy that, like you just said, many of his kids go to college and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I like I don't have anything against Elon Musk's money.
Yeah.
I just sold.
So that's not necessarily a poison pill, because they can't determine who's actually going to buy the stock either. I mean, they can't pick it up themselves.
Okay, well, Elon has been arranging additional financing from investment groups
Right.
and from other billionaires that he talks to quietly.
Yeah.
And what I liked very much was in an interview in the last few days, someone asked Elon Musk about his offer and if it were turned down or they messed with him. They said, "Do you have a plan B?" And he said, "Yes."
Yes. That's all he said is yes. And that's what I was wondering about now.
Exactly. Well, what am I supposed to tell you what I'm going to do so
Yeah.
that you can prepare for that? No. Yes, I have a plan.
He's a real sharp operator, that's for sure. And he was the richest guy in the world, and makes money at the cars, and he launches satellites. And I changed my mind about, not to change my mind about the guy, but I was very impressed with the fact that he could have a rocket go up into space, and then seeing that same rocket come down and land on a little spot in the ocean.
Right.
The size of this room here, and so on. That was an amazing, and NASA now, they just launched a satellite recently, in fact. They just give that contract to SpaceX, which is, of course, his company, because okay, Elon, here's your money, and make sure to get the satellite up there.
Well, in fact,
and he did.
Very recently, like in the last few weeks,
Yeah.
there was a launch from Vandenberg,
Yeah.
and they brought that the booster right back down in Vandenberg,
Yeah.
maybe a quarter mile from where it took off.
Yeah.
And of course, I've seen one go up and land before.
Yeah.
But it's most impressive, especially.
You've seen it or just seen it on TV?
I watched it from the San Ynez Valley.
Okay, really?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know you did that. Yeah, really?
Yeah.
You went up there and watched that, 'cause that
Well,
would be something. That'd really be something to see.
I didn't get as close as I did for a couple of other launches I've watched, but
Yeah.
those weren't SpaceX that would come back. The coming back thing is really impressive. It's
Coming back and landing on a spot.
We've all seen the launches, but when they come back and land there, that's really good.
That's what I'm saying. That was really impressive, and he's the
Yeah.
one that did it. And, I don't know about NASA that they were able to. I don't know if they even tried to do it and so on. But he said he could do it. Nobody thought he could, and sure enough, he did it. And now it's not even in the news anymore.
And of course, this was our vision of the future back in the 50s when people started talking about moonshots. In fact, there was Disney did a sort of rah-rah boost for the space program. It's
Yeah.
called Destination Moon.
Yeah.
And in those, the rockets they descended on a pillar of their own flame
Yeah.
and stuck the landing.
Yeah, stuck
And-
on right.
Well,
Yeah.
now we're doing it, and it's really
Yeah.
very nice. And of course, that is essentially what our moon landings had to do. By the way, it's a very good trick if you want to try
That's
that.
true. That's true. That's how they landed that on the moon. They landed a rocket.
Yeah,
on the spot.
that was the lunar module
Right.
came down, and you're orbiting. You do a deorbit burn, so you start going slower and falling.
Yeah.
You have to touch it up a little bit on the way down, so you don't get to falling too fast.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right.
And right at that last part, you only want to be falling at about a meter a second.
Yeah. Right.
Whereas we've been going around it at about 2,000 meters a second.
Right.
Now you want to come down. That last part has to be really gentle.
Yeah. But and that's all. That's not even. Is that in the power of the guy that the two people that are in it? Or is that just
There was
programmed in.
It was our first one. It was programmed in with manual override, and the guys had practiced manual override in case.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, the exact spot that they were going to come down in, they're looking out and saying, "That's a bunch of boulders," and they jumped in and maneuvered it out. And there's a bare spot.
Yeah, right.
And they got it down. They had a good 10, 15 seconds worth of fuel left.
Yeah.
So you said, it's going to be on the ground someplace pretty soon.
Yeah.
You want-
Whether we like it or not. Yeah.
So let's make it a good spot.
But even so, I mean, now of course, this was like 40 years ago now, something like that.
That was 1969.
Yeah, that's
So
more than 40 years ago. 70, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
60.
I remember that when they that's one of those things you
50.
kind of knew where you were when that first moon landing.
Sure. My parents let me stay up late. They said, we don't land on the moon every day. Yeah, you can stay up.
Yeah, they're up late, right? Anyway, got off because the bottom line is Elon Musk is you don't want to bet against him. Put it that way. You haven't heard the last of this guy, and I like the guy because I think about I heard something. He had to run for office. No, he can make or break people that run for office. What, $300 billion? He may be the first trillionaire. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens.
I don't even know what to think of him, except he's a very interesting person. And
yes, and he's successful.
I have what I call I have a high tolerance for eccentricity. So So I have gotten along reasonably well with some very interesting people. Not necessarily, they weren't bad. They were not necessarily the nicest or the sweetest or the smoothest to get along with, but they were so interesting. You think, God, I got to stick around and find out what else he's going to say.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So,
or do.
Absolutely.
What's his next move? You're talking about he had a drilling machine. What do you call them?
Oh yes,
digger.
That's right. It's a tunnel boring machine.
Tunnel boring machine.
He wanted to do this, and I think he's been doing some tunnels under Los Angeles.
Yeah, right.
But because they bore tunnels, he's called the Boring Company, which is a great name. And
B-O-R-I-N-G.
Yeah,
boring.
Boring.
Well, he's not boring, that's for sure.
No, he's not. And you think about it, the guy's many ventures. I mean, I think his first big money was PayPal.
Yeah, right. And he made a few million off of that one. That's for sure.
He made plenty off of PayPal.
Yeah.
And of course, he and his brother at the beginning, they basically had an apartment and a tiny office that they were sleeping in half the time and coding all of the time. It was not one of these things where, oh, there you go, son, here, start your business. Here's 15 million, which I think is probably the way Trump did it. But anyway, what the heck? He had a flair for business. He went to business school, and his dad was a multimillionaire. It's not surprising that he said, "Why don't you help me with the business?" He says, "Well, why don't you take over the business?" But anyway, here's Elon, really done it. I just wanted to throw out the amusing little, I guess it's a joke about Elon Musk and being shunned by Twitter, because Elon is naturalized. He's a foreigner who's now
South Africa.
Now he's American. But he was from South Africa. So someone wanted to say, Twitter discriminates against African American, and refer to Elon.
I want you to talk about you. I know you wanted to talk about liberals of TikTok.
Oh yeah,
TikTok. I don't know what the hell. I don't even know what that is. Basically.
Yeah, you're lucky man.
Yeah.
But in fact,
I have been ostracized on Twitter, on TikTok. In fact, it's something to do with my being a landlord.
Oh,
I found out later that basically everything is bad on TikTok. You should ignore it, basically.
It's destroying people's minds. Or actually, I often wonder, does it really destroy people's minds, or does it just let them show you how degenerate they've become?
Yeah.
After all, that's one of the observations. People used to say, "Well, sports build character," and one wag more than a century ago said, "Sports do not build character; they reveal it."
Yeah, right.
Well, if you have good coaches,
depending on the sport too.
Yeah, I think if you have good coaches and good umpires, it could actually build character.
Yeah.
But at any rate, TikTok has let people vent every dumbass thing that they've ever thought of. I mean, one of the things that I've seen that I just find stunning, but some folks I know follow this, is just women giving other women dating advice. And you listen to it and you think, that is the stupidest dating advice I've heard today. But I expect it to be exceeded within the next hour.
Right.
But things where you say, oh yeah, confront him all the time and scream at him a lot. Men love that.
Yeah, right.
And you'll pick up several future husbands right there.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a this person has been outed. They say doxed, in that her real name has been revealed and her address has been published. And I say, in general, doxing is only done as incitement to harass, where the person
at the minimum.
Yes, harass or worse. Where the doxer, they say, I didn't throw rocks through their window.
Yeah, right.
I just told everybody who wanted to throw rocks through her window where she lived.
Where she lived,
and when
right.
she gets home.
Yeah.
So I'm really not impressed with the,
So TikTok basically.
Okay, this is okay. There's a woman whose handle on something else. I think maybe on Twitter was the libs of TikTok. Libs short for liberals. It was obviously it's not a nice way to call them.
Yeah.
But they say libs of TikTok, and what she was doing, and this was so amazingly devastating, was that she did not offer commentary, and she did not condemn anyone. She simply showed you the video that they'd posted.
Yeah.
So you said, I'm not going to tell you that they're nuts.
Yeah.
I'll let them tell you.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, people are
You may
basically
have
saying,
missed this. We should see this.
And-
Bet she had a real following. Huh?
oh, huge! Yeah, I was starting to really enjoy some of her stuff. But here's people saying, I can't believe how bad she makes us look by showing people what we said. I thought, are you kidding? She just increased your audience.
Right, exactly. And you, like I said, freedom of speech is a great thing, because not for one thing, you want to give these people, some people, freedom of speech because they make jerks of themselves, and now you really know they are a jerk.
Well, for instance,
Let them have it. They're like Donald Trump, I guess, because they say the same thing. I'm sure that's what they say. Let him screw himself.
this is
great.
It is precisely right. Let's take something that most people disapprove of, and I'll say I disapprove of it too.
Yeah.
That's the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah.
Or Ku Klux Klan.
Right.
Okay. Racist. Really, I don't like the way they think. I don't like anything they do.
Right.
But you don't silence them. You let them talk. Because how will you? Otherwise, if you silence them, fine. They find secret ways to communicate and get together, and they feel suppressed. They say, I know I'm right because they can't handle the truth. And so, they actually get sicker and also more likely to do a bad thing. Whereas if they you let them come out and say, oh, say your piece. And they say, and everybody listens, and I say, wow, you're an idiot.
Exactly. They don't even say that. They just walk away. Like I always say about freedom of speech, there's also a freedom to listen. If you don't like what they say, don't listen to them.
Yeah.
You don't have to listen to these people. And of course, they'll say, right, well, the other people are listening to them and getting cheated and so on. That's not your job. It's if you decide that somebody is, as you say, a jerk and so on, well, let them make jerks, continue to do that. But you can't speak for all those people. Take them off the air because he's a jerk. Well, maybe other people see it a little differently.
Mm-hmm. I see. You clean up your act.
Yeah.
And at that point, you might be in a good position, if you like, to advise them to clean up their act, but you don't make them clean up their act.
Like I say, you have the right to vote once in every election and so on. That is what you're right. You can't vote for somebody else.
Many times I wish to, but no, you don't get to do that, and it's a good thing you don't get to do that.
Okay, I got just a couple more. Well, I got a bunch of things here. Caruso, we'll just cover real quickly. There's an article in the LA Times today about Caruso. This is I forgot his name now, exact first name, but he's running for mayor of this. Rick Cruz. Yeah, he's a developer. And he doesn't have that many developments, although he was one that developed a hotel out there in Montecito. I know that he had that one.
Isn't he? Yeah, and isn't he the one who was briefly married to Darva Conger? That there was some, Who Wants to Marry a Millionaire bizarro show.
I don't know that. I don't know about that.
How soon they forget.
Anyway, there's a lot of things about the guy. He was on the police commission and so on, and supposedly now they're getting after him because he missed 40% of the meetings and blah blah blah, and so on. But now they're after him to taxes. And I'll just read the top headline because we only have a few minutes left here. The headline: This is a I put my glasses on. Columnist for the Los Angeles Times. He's there pretty much in this case every Wednesday or Thursday, something like that. His name is Nicholas Goldberg. And the title of it is, it shouldn't be okay for anyone to buy an election. When I just read that headline, I knew this was about Caruso. Right off the bat, I knew it. Sure enough, the very first paragraph, I'm so sick of Rich Caruso. That's the first paragraph. You don't have to read the rest of the article even. You know that the money that he was supposedly going to, he's buying at all these ads and so on. You said you saw an ad. In fact, I haven't, but
Heard one on the radio.
yeah, on the radio. He is making himself known, I guess, to people and so on, and that costs money to do all that thing and so on. But can you really buy an election? Well, if that's the case, then her name was Meg Whitman, who spent $142 million to be governor of the state of California. She ran against Jerry Brown, who didn't raise that kind of money. He got elected overwhelmingly in the election. So I guess 140 million. I know what's his name was the ran for Congress. Guy we don't like. He ran for the
Michael
Senate.
Huffington.
Michael Huffington, right? He spent $38 million trying to get a seat in the Senate, the state of California. He lost 2. And the list goes on and on about people who spent a lot of money. It isn't the money, it's your savvy. Jerry Brown was pretty hard to beat. He's the only governor of the state of California who actually served 4 terms, not consecutively, because that's illegal.
Right,
but he
two
served
in the 70s and then 2 in the 90s.
Yeah, two at one time, and then he became mayor of Oakland or something like that, and so on. And he came back and ran for the governorship again, which, by the way, he now lives in Arizona because they didn't want to have to pay California's income tax. He has a ranch there in Arizona, some house out there. That's where he lives. That's my on that one. But Caruso is an interesting guy, and we'll see if he can mayor. It may very well be, because he's running on a backing crime situation. But of course, the LA Times and this guy here, of course, is the only other line he said. The only other line he said that I like is, he's doing this promising that the rest of Los Angeles presume. Let's see, but there is the male developer turned mayoral candidate bombarding us with the rest of the Los Angeles, and with the stick of that for another dispensing the usual bromides of cleaning up crime, homelessness, and corruption until we're hearing the same promises of our sleep. The candidates that are running against them are doing the same thing, but they're Democrats. And they promise the same thing all the time. And guess what? That's where the crime and all problems really come from. The cities that are run by Democratic mayors.
I thought, when you mentioned this guy to me, I thought, especially how he was so unhappy about Caruso's promises, I thought, hey, tell you what, steal the issue from him. Solve the crime and homelessness so he can't run on that. Go ahead.
Yeah,
People will love you, right?
Right?
If you solve the crime and homelessness instead, won't they love you instead of him? Yeah, knock yourself out. But no, he's a bad guy. Nobody who's out here voting and paying taxes likes crime or homelessness. And they'd like to, something done about it, preferably something good. But just... It troubles him that this is an issue. It's an issue.
I have a theory here that I haven't expressed to you, that maybe I have in the past and so on. A lot of people that are homeless want to be homeless. It's nice to be homeless. I know at Isla Vista, they had the homeless in the park, had all these tents and so on. It was messy, and they finally tore it down. It really was a mess. But they also put up these things called pallets, which are houses, smaller than a jail cell, and 2 people could sleep in the house, but there was a fence around it and all kinds of rules and so on and so forth. They tore it down. None of the homeless people wanted anything to do with it and so on. Well, they got rid of the homeless park there and so on. There was a lot of tents and so on. They kind of liked that. And the other one is the armory down on Canaperito Street, which I went to because I was in the Army at the time, way in the past. Which they turned into a homeless shelter and so on. Nobody came. They didn't want to be sleeping with a bunch of guys they had a gymnasium there, in a big gymnasium. They went there for meals. They went there for showers and so on, but they didn't live there. The homelessness was not such a bad deal because they got a lot of freebies. The Fig Tree was a very popular place. They actually got mail. It was a mailing address to the Fig Tree in Santa Barbara. That's where they got their mail. In fact, that's where they registered to vote, in the Fig Tree. Anyway.
Not
No.
everybody's an old feller like us. So used to be that there were traffic signals on 101
Yeah, right.
at,
I'm thinking about that today.
and at State Street and Garden Street and Chapala
Yeah.
crossed 101 at grade level at
Yeah.
those traffic lights. And so those people would just wait until the light changed and they would walk across the freeway to,
Yeah.
who knows, a liquor store.
Yeah, right, two of them. Marati's. That I know the story there because I used to have a liquor store on the other side of the freeway, but we closed up early. And the idea was that the only liquor store that was open after a certain time was Marati's, which was on the other side of the freeway. And unfortunately, some of the guys they were already a little drunk, and those trucks came from viewers that know the situation there. There's a kind of like a little bend that comes around, and those trucks came hauling hell bent for leather around there and so on. If these guys are trying to make the light, trying to run across and so on, they hit him in Chapala Street, and he fell off the grill at State Street by the time the truck stopped. He was dead. I know one instance that happened. Again, that wasn't funny, but the bottom line is it was very dangerous. It took years to get that done. That's another whole story about the government, local government, and so on and so forth. It took a long time to get that piece. I always said there's a freeway on the Canadian border all the way down to the Mexican border, and there was no stoplights, only 3 stoplights. They were all in Santa Barbara.
Yeah, for a while there was also one in Morgan Hill.
There was? Well,
Yeah.
maybe that was later on and so on, but I know that it was
Look,
very close.
I'd like to jump in with one quickie. And
Yeah,
that is
you only got a
that-
couple minutes.
Yeah, I understood. That Donald Trump sat down for an interview with Piers Morgan in a British show.
Yeah, there you
It was
go.
Piers's show.
Yeah.
And they took some of the tape and they edited it and showed it and said that Trump stormed out of the interview when there was a question he didn't like. Well, there was at least 1 or 2 questions he didn't like, but he didn't storm out of any interview.
When it was
Trump-
over, he got up
yeah.
and left.
Yeah, well, the interview was over. What Trump does very intelligently is he has his own people come and record everything.
Yeah, right.
Because he doesn't want, he knows about being selectively edited, so he's been able to provide the audio and say, nope,
Yeah.
that's not what happened.
On that note, that's it. And there's what the idea of Media Watch. The editing is censorship, and that's exactly what they do. They edit the film and comments and so on. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and we'll be back. Thank you very much.
I have this